Here's a short discussion on the changing of tense in Latin. Before I get carried away with tenses, I want to talk first about the difference between a linking verb and a helping verb. As you can see, I've got several sentences here, and these two circled, A and C, both have the word is in it. Now, we know that is a linking verb. In Latin, we use s to link two nominatives together. We have the nominative, the boy, puer, and let's make him a slave. So we connect those two together with a linking verb, and it basically helps us describe or help identify which boy we're talking about. It links boy and his description, servus, together. Over on the left-hand side here, we have that same thing is happening right here. He is being linked with boy. It's helping us further identify what he or who he is. Down here in C, though, there is not a link happening. He walking is not being connected with is. Is helping the verb walk identify itself or identify its tense. In this case, we have the present tense. In English, we would call this the present progressive, a continuing action. But it is present tense, and that helping verb helps walk change its tense. And other forms too later, but we'll get to those whenever we get to those. Next we have on B and D, we have the word was. Once again, they're the same, and we know from our Latin that erat is a linking verb, and it can connect two words like puella and ancilla. Those are two nominative being connected by erat. The girl was a slave girl. But then you have over here, same thing happening on B. He was a boy, he and boy being connected together. But when we get down here to D, again, was is not connecting he and walking. It's helping walking with its tense change. We've gone from present tense to the imperfect tense. And then finally down here at E, we have another type of helping verb. We have several types of helping verbs in English. Did is the one that we're going to use with the perfect tense, so that's why I left it here. It is helping, again, helping walk, determining what tense it is. So a linking verb links two nominatives together, while a helping verb changes the tense of the word in English. In Latin, we do not have helping verbs. There will not be a helping verb. We will not put est whenever we have ambulat. We do not need est in the sentence. The is walking in this case is how we translate that whole word. We don't say est ambulat, he is walking. We just say ambulat. That's because the helping verbs in Latin do not exist. We're not going to use helping verbs. They do use est to link two things together, like right here, but only as a linking verb. Next, we're going to identify the tense changes in the Latin. So far, we've had words or sentences like this one. We have the girl enters, that's present tense. We translate that as enters or is entering. The villa. So we have a nominative subject, we have an accusative direct object, and then we have a present tense verb. That's how we've seen most of the sentences so far to this point. Now they're starting to kind of sneak these little tenses in here. BA. You have to recognize the difference between introt and intrabit. You have to recognize the difference between introt and intrawit. We have to be able to identify what we call tense markers. For the imperfect tense, it's going to be BA pretty much every time. Introt, there is not a tense marker, so it doesn't have one. Here, it's the V. And remember, for the perfect tense, we can have an S, a U, a V, an X, or we can have a long mark over that vowel right before the ending, or right before the ending syllable. So these are all, you have to be able to recognize est as present and erat as imperfect. If you can do that, we can get to the translation. We can get to the translation, but we have to identify that there's a tense change. We cannot translate puella wilum, the girl enters the house, and then translate B as puella wilum intrabat, the girl enters the house. You have to change the tense. The girl was entering the house, and then C, the girl entered the house. We have to be able to recognize those tense changes based on the endings that they're putting in on those words. Okay, when we're translating this, we're going to translate these. The first one, the girl enters. We could also use, like I said earlier, we can say is entering the house. Enters and is entering in Latin are not distinguished. In English, enters is what we call simple present tense, and is entering is what we call present progressive tense. So English does define the difference between enters and is entering. Latin will not. So which one do I use? Either one. They're both fine. B, I have Puella Willem Intrabat. The girl was entering the house. I encourage you to use was entering as much as you can. Entered is fine as well. Again, there's not really a distinction between tenses in Latin the way that there is in English. This, for us, is imperfect tense in Latin. Intrabat, because of the BA, makes it imperfect tense. I want you to think of that BA as the word was or were. And that should help us. That is a helping verb that is changing the tense to the imperfect tense. Very often, however, the continuation of action is not definite, and you can use words like entered instead. So if you use the simple past tense entered instead of the imperfect was entering, I'm not going to be too upset with you, but I would prefer for right now that anytime that you see that BA, that you use the word was or were. Sentence 3, we have Puella intrawit. Again, I have to identify the perfect tense. Translation is the girl entered, simple present, the house. You can say did enter as well. Again, Latin will not distinguish between those two translations. To them, they're all the same. It's just past tense. It's done. It's finished. It's specifically one point on the timeline. It's completed action. That's what perfect means. It's completed. Whereas you see was entering could happen over a period of time. That's why we call it continuation of action. Finally, we get down to the linking verb parts, and we have the girl is a slave. S is present tense, and then we have the girl was a slave, and that is was is the erat. So ERA and BA are the ones that are being used as was or were. We're only going to see this ERA as a linking verb when it's translated as was. Later on, we'll see it in different forms. But for right now, the ERA is was or were for the linking verb. To recap, if you can pretty much do everything that's on this section right here, you're going to be in great shape. Present tense is a word like when it. And whenever I have a word like when it, we translate it as he comes or he is coming. We also have the present tense here, est, he is. That is our linking verb. Imperfect tense, I've changed when it. I've added the BA and when bot, and I'm going to translate that as was coming. Kept coming is okay. Even began to come is okay. All of these are continuing action, or they're an action that took place over a period of time. That's why they're imperfect. And then the translation for the linking verb is he was. All of these helping verbs being used are okay for the imperfect tense. But again, when you see the BA, I would really prefer for right now that you think of it as was or were. Finally, we get down here to wane it, and actually there should be a long mark over that E. That long mark over that E, remember we have S, U, V, X, and a long mark as tense markers for the perfect tense. The long mark over this right here, the long mark over when it right here, is making it perfect tense. So my translation then becomes, he came, he did come. We do not have a perfect tense linking verb yet. We will get one, but not right now. So he came or he did come. I gave you alternate translations here to help you hopefully understand that Latin is, well, it's really efficient. When a bot means all of these at the same time. When it means both of these at the same time. It's very efficient. It's a lot easier to learn than English, unfortunately, because English is so difficult. We have a hard time getting to another language, especially one as efficient as Latin. I hope this helped you out, and we'll see you later.